Hey guys, welcome back to yet another weekly crystal mission run. This week they gave us Quina's event, which is the 2 giant frogs. For this stage I brought a red crystal team because I'm just one fight away from getting the U2 crystal passive for the red crystal. This fight centers around the ability for you to be able to break the boss whenever they battery themselves. If you have a way to do that consistently, then the difficulty drops significantly. Also, of course, HP mitigation is recommended because there is an off chance that they battery themselves right as they get a turn, which would then mean that they instantly unload their max brave onto you, and that will kill a character unless you have some form of mitigation. So HP damage mitigation helps as a backup insurance policy overall. To break the boss, I have 7. The boss batteries themselves and also grants themselves a few buffs at 100% and thereafter every 20% HP loss. Normally it will be pretty difficult to break the boss because the buff that they grant themselves also significantly increases their defense, and essentially you'll be hitting for 1 brave damage if you just try to do regular attacks. 7's bondage whip, the often attack, is very good here because it is not dependent on the enemy's defense. The brave damage algorithm that it uses is just dependent on 7's attack stat. So in a way it's somewhat of a gravity brave shaving attack. And if you have 7's additional ability as well as a call that boosts attack, in this case I used the Garnet call, 7's bondage whip can gravity shave the boss from 100% brave all the way down to 0 in one go. I did have to boost 7's attack stat a little bit because I did unequip her buff attack speed up passive just to make her a little bit slower. I also did remove speed up passives on the rest of the party as well, and as always you can refer to the video description for more details on what I removed. Aerith is another great party member here. Not only of course is she a force gauge charger as well as having nice echoes, but the rest of Aerith's kit is actually pretty handy here as well. Her Seal Evil will prevent the bosses from buffing themselves outright, so you don't have to worry about the defense up buff at all. That being said, it doesn't matter even if they buff themselves because 7 will just battery shave them, and once you break them, the buffs will be dispelled. Lastly, I am using Aerith's BT Plus Gold Frame buff for the damage mitigation. There are options here because I brought Beatrix. You could also use Beatrix Holy Knight Protection combined with a BT Aura to prevent HP damage. Either way is fine, but I think this way is better overall because it's easier to set up. This also means that if you do it this way, you don't actually need Beatrix's BT, just Beatrix FR is actually enough for this fight. Anyway, I left 7 with the starting speed up passive. This is just to ensure that 7 goes first, because if the enemy start first, it's going to be a disaster. They will instantly kill someone. With the starting speed up, at least 7 will start first, battery shave and remove their buffs, and thereafter you can get the off turn strat going. 7 starting first also means that she needs some sort of call that can break both bosses at the start. Any call with instant break such as struggle can work. I just went for Bartz, no particular reason, but Bartz LD call can also gravity shave an enemy down to 0 and break them, so that works pretty well. On Aerith's turn, I used her BT mode to win the force gauge race, so just spam healing wind until you are 70 to 75% in the force gauge, and then after that go into BT mode with Aerith. The BT mode allows you to use S1, S2 to finish charging the force gauge, and after that Beatrix will get her turn and can enter into force time, therefore allowing you to enter force mode with force time before the bosses can. This part of the fight is pretty straightforward. The one thing you have to keep an eye on is the buffs and debuffs. So in particular, Aerith's Seal Evil lasts only for 4 turns, and the bosses will get multiple consecutive turns because you've removed speed up from your team. So you do need to refresh Aerith's Seal Evil debuff as and when necessary. Secondly, if you don't have Beatrix's BT+, then you should use her Thunder Slash in the place of the BT Plus that I used in this fight, so that she can apply her Noble Loyalty buff on the allies. If you have BT Plus, you don't have to do that because BT Plus locks her buffs in place. Thirdly is Beatrix's LD debuff, the one that gives her the Rose Petal follow-up. At the start of the fight, it lasts only for like 2 turns or so you do need to refresh that debuff again as and when necessary. So keep an eye out on the buffs and debuffs across the stage and use the relevant skills to refresh them when you need to. So this is where I use Beatrix BT Plus. The only reason I used it here is just for the auras. Like I said, if you don't have it, I think you can actually make do without. Just use Thunder Slash here instead. Finally is Aerith's gold buff. You get the gold buff when you exit her BT mode the first time. However, the very first time she gets a turn after Beatrix, I used double echoes with Aerith, so that really burns off her gold frame buff since she takes multiple turns. Use Aerith's BT Plus to refresh a gold frame buff when it's at 1 turn duration remaining. Always ensure that you have either Aerith's gold frame buff or Beatrix Holy Knight protection up, one of them, just to make sure that you don't suffer from the enemy's HP attack. If you have either of those buffs up, nothing in this stage can kill you because all of the bosses' HP damage is mitigatable, and both of those effects fully mitigate HP damage, so you are completely safe while either of those are up. In the meantime, you are actually doing pretty decent off-turn damage because you have 7's Bondage Whip, you have Aerith's overhead attack once every 3 turns, and of course you have Beatrix's counters whenever the bosses take a turn. All 3 characters also do pretty okay to decent damage on their turns, making this fight overall a very smooth run. I didn't even use the Seed Rain's call on Beatrix now that I think about it. There wasn't really a need to during the fight. And at the start of the fight, you do have to be a bit cautious about not taking too many turns before Aerith finishes her BT mode, because the bosses do charge their force gauge extremely quickly during your turn. Once I entered Beatrix's BT mode, there wasn't ever a need to use the Rain's call since it sort of wastes a turn of force. And it also drags the rest of your party members' turn order up, which forces you to spend more turns, therefore making your force time actually shorter overall. In an off-turn comp, obviously, the less turns that you take, the better it is. Here you can see an example of the boss hitting a threshold. When they hit one of the thresholds, which I think is every 20% health or so, they will grant themselves buffs, but Aerith's Seal Evil will prevent that from popping. However, the effects of the threshold is still there, which is they will regen like 7 million HP on their turn, and that's unavoidable. But they will also battery themselves to max brave, and this is where 7's Bondage Whip comes in. It brings them down all the way to 0 almost immediately. And once you break them, the HP regen effect will be gone. Since you have Beatrix counter attacking, this usually means that at most they can only regen their health for 1 turn, which isn't too bad. And although there are multiple triggers, so they will regen their health multiple times in the fight, essentially I just look at it as them having a slightly higher HP pool. And this team with the Brother Summon can easily still take them down very comfortably. As the rest of the fight is playing out, just want to share my plans for the crystal passives. So right now, after this fight, I will have every crystal U2 except for yellow crystal. I will be working on yellow crystal U2 passive next. Once I have all the U2 passives, I think most likely what I want to do is work on white crystal. I want to get the crystal passive that makes LD use stronger in the expense of EX. because we do have characters such as Anna Crow and the twins that don't really use their EX that often at all anyway, but their LD packs a punch, and you know, having a stronger LD I think makes a world of a difference there. Either that, or I want to work on the green crystals to get characters such as Ruby Kante having the tanking passive. I can't remember which one that is, but the one that makes often strategy a bit better. So either white or green, but I'm leaning more towards white as of now. But let's see, I'll think about this once I complete the yellow U2 crystal passives. I do want to stress that there is really no optimal approach to the crystal passives. It's largely dependent on your roster of course, but also how you like to approach the game. I've talked to a few other content creators and everyone's approach is actually a little bit different. So if you have a different approach to the crystal passives, don't worry too much about it, just stick to your plan. Eventually, you know, everyone will be at the same level because, you know, everyone's crystal passives will be maxed out. Maybe the only one thing to consider is that once you fully unlock a color crystal, so unlock all the passives, you will also unlock one special ability, I think. At least that's what I gather from the way JP is going. In any case, the crystal passives, even with that, still remains a so-called win faster sort of thing. It's not really mandatory to clear content. I'm quite sure even up till now you can clear content with 0 crystal passives invested in. But of course, you know, it does make sense to do it as they come every week because it is a somewhat of a free resource, or a free upgrade I should say, to the characters. Just upgrade whichever one that you think fits best for you. Anywho, this is the end of the fight. The boss is dead right here. As always, I hope the video has been helpful, and if you enjoy the content, really do leave a like, comment or subscribe because it really helps a lot. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next Crystal Mission Quest. Bye!